Hi, I'm Abby Roche, a social media strategist at Online Optimism. As our team has been working on social media campaigns for local New Orleans businesses, we've been having a lot of internal conversations about the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina and how to best factor that into our work. Many small businesses or small marketers might not have someone to have that conversation with. And so we've invited our senior director of social media to join me for a conversation to get her perspective. And while all opinions are subjective, I do hope this conversation at least gets your wheels turning for what you'd like to do.
Hi, I'm Meara McNitt. I am the Senior Director of Social Media at Online Optimism. I lived in Sleta, Louisiana for most of my life, which meant that I was there for Hurricane Katrina. We actually evacuated to Baton Rouge, but as you can guess, it wasn't a great evacuation spot. It impacted my 5th grade year of school. I was 10 when it happened. And so it's something that is very much a part of my lived experience, something that I have a lot of opinions on as a marketer. So that's what we're going to talk about here today.
How do you feel when you see businesses posting about the anniversary? For you, what separates authentic acknowledgement from something that feels more performative?
I think that it's really important to acknowledge Katrina. It obviously shaped the city of New Orleans in a irrevocable way. It has never been the same. And that also expands over to a lot of people in Mississippi. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that happened. But I think that the relationship of your business or entity to Katrina should kind of reflect in how you post about it. I don't think it's a time to make sales. I do not think it is necessarily an event that you should be profiting off of. It is something to respect. Because it's the 20th anniversary, I feel like it's a little different. If it was just kind of like a non-significant anniversary year, I would say kind of think of it like the 9/11 route, where not every business needs to have a post about 9/11. We all know it happened. It was bad. The date stands out in our minds. No one cares that a tech company will never forget. And Katrina is kind of the same way, it doesn't need to make sense for your business to have something to say, because it is worse to say something useless than to say nothing at all.
Yeah, it's important to have action behind your words, not just say the words. The community that's affected by the terrible thing that happened still had the terrible thing happen to them, and they just know that people are behind them. But other than that, doesn't really do much more.
And also, I think it's important to remember that Hurricane Katrina disproportionately affected different identities. If you are someone who's not part of a community that was as devastated as some others were, make sure that you're not acting in a way that will be taking it lightly or minimizing the pain and the tragedy that was caused.
When you're working with clients on whether to make a post for the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, what's your decision-making process?
So we have a lot of clients in the New Orleans area. Some of them existed pre-Katrina. Some of them are post-Katrina. Again, it's really asking that question of, do we have something to say that is worth hearing? Or are we just being and here's a reminder from us as well? We have a few clients who actually have been doing very significant work for the long haul since it happened, doing research and advocacy. It means a lot to us to know that some of the most significant institutions of New Orleans have been doing this work and have been seeing what can be done to prevent this from happening again. And it doesn't feel like a pat on the back to us for them to say hey, it's a 20th anniversary. This is a terrible thing. Let us show you how we haven't just been that sucked and turned our back to it. It feels good to know that people have actually continued to acknowledge it and try to fix it.
Quick question about imagery depicting Hurricane Katrina. Do you have any recommendations for businesses that want to share a post because they've been, directly impacted by Hurricane Katrina and been doing that research and advocacy, but maybe are worried about coming off as triggering to their audience?
Yeah. I'm being honest. I'm honestly someone who is very sensitive about imagery about Katrina. During Hurricane Ida a few years ago, a lot of my friends and I realized that we had a lot more trauma stored in our body than we realized. There's some things that I see that I'm ooh, that doesn't sit right with me. So the X's that they put outside of buildings denote how many people, pets were in there, dead or alive. I wouldn't post one of those. I think that those are really a triggering image. I wouldn't post anything that has a person in it during Katrina. First of all, you don't know who that person is, how they are. I do think that if you have a physical building and you have photos of it before Katrina, right after Katrina, and now, I think that those are things that it's like kind of a like, this is who we were, this is what happened to us, this is where we are. I think that those are okay to show. General Louisiana imagery, like the New Orleans skyline, the surrounding areas. It could go either way if you're showing like the overhead photo of Katrina, the storm system itself. I would always err on the side of caution by sharing the least exact imagery that you can, because this is not something that people need to be shown to know existed.
Absolutely. Like another great option may be like if your business does volunteering like in the area, sharing those pictures instead to show how you're trying to make the community better and strengthen it versus just essentially profiting off of the pain of an entire community. What about businesses that weren't in Louisiana in 2005 but are now a part of the community? Do they have a role in this conversation? And if so, what does that look like?
I think it's important to be part of the community. And that's part of the thing of New Orleans is there's this like thing against transplants, but like how well you invest yourself in the community kind of like negates that transplant status. And I think that if you're a business who has just moved in and ridden the wave of being in New Orleans without contributing to the culture of the community, then you know what? Maybe this isn't your place to say anything. But if you have been involved in the community, your example of like volunteering, especially in areas that were highly impacted and are still in recovery, like that is a great thing to showcase. And again, not in a like, we did this, we did great, pat on back to us. This is still a real and like hard thing that the city is overcoming. We want to help you overcome it kind of way.
So then from a practical standpoint, if businesses are deciding to say something, what are your do's and don'ts that you're sharing with clients right now?
Number one don't is use the word resilient. There's a thing about calling New Orleans resilient where it feels like there's a lot of government and leadership failures that have like forced people to be resilient. And it's like, well, what do you want them to do? Pack up their bags and leave and move somewhere else and abandon their culture, their home, their families is insulting. Instead of calling us resilient, do something to help. Do show your investment in the community. Do keep in mind the inequity of recovery and impact. Do remember that there have been devastating hurricanes to New Orleans since Katrina, and people are still healing from those. Don't be flippant. Don't be like, it happened and it's 20 years later and now it's a party. It's not. There's still a lot of devastation all around. There's still a lot of people who never got to come home, and you have to be respectful of that.
Absolutely. When you are helping clients think through sensitive topics like this, what's your framework generally, and how do you help them find an authentic voice?
The number one thing is to make sure that, to the best that you can, have someone who firsthand experienced it and has local perspective assisting on the topic. I do still talk to other people that I know who experienced it because it's not a singular experience, you know, like there's a lot of different perspectives to be had. So that's another thing, is considering what those different perspectives could be, talking it through with the client to make sure that we've decided what perspective feels most true to them, and just making sure that whatever we're doing isn't a far departure from what they have done this whole time. If no one's asking for it, you don't need to insert yourself.
Absolutely. Because honestly, especially with like if you're marketing to Gen Z audiences, they can absolutely detect when something's coming across in an inauthentic way. How has social media changed the expectations for businesses to respond to these kind of anniversaries, in your opinion?
Ooh, I think social media has made people feel pressured to have something to say. Usually when you feel pressured to have something to say, you say the wrong thing. Social media moves so quickly that people are like, if we don't say something now, then we've missed the moment. And if we miss the moment, people will be mad at us because we didn't participate. People are smarter than is assumed. And if the apology comes late or the statement comes late or whatever it is, and they're like, they took their time and thought this through and they did a good job. A late good job is better than a fast bad job.
Definitely agree with that.
And you know, if your business is one that it doesn't really make sense for you to post about this, there are going to be businesses in your ecosystem, maybe not direct competitors, but your neighbors who are going to be posting things, and you can share their posts to your stories. Instagram has a repost feature now, so you can just repost it. You can still support the message and the information without having to take up space. Instead, give the space that you would take up to someone who's saying something valuable.
Do you have any final thoughts on how businesses can show that they're genuinely part of the community during moments like this?
Closing your business for the day and going and finding a volunteer project that's rehabbing something that was impacted by either Hurricane Katrina or Ida. Finding a way to be like, hey, maybe because we don't have anything helpful to say, we can have something helpful to do. And I think that's a great way to engage in any significant event. Actions speak louder than words a lot of the time. And I think that's the point.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for answering all my questions.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Abby.